Welcome back, everyone, to the Sean Trey Show. I've got a really interesting guest with me today. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so my name is Bas Lebesque. I live in the Netherlands in Amsterdam. I'm a leadership coach, personal leadership coach, um, and I have a sidekick which you might not even be aware of, but I did funerals
Really?
and fun. I do some stand up comedy as well. So
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah.
That's an interesting.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
That's an interesting combination. Like your journey though is really transformative. You know on your bio you said you were working 100-hour weeks, and then you
Yes.
shifted to becoming an executive coach. Like, what caused you to make that shift?
Well, that was, I think there was 20 years between those two moments. I came out of hotel management school and I really wanted to do something different, and I wanted to make a career in hotel management. So this was in 1996, and I decided to go to Shanghai, China, and it was a very different place back then. Um, and yeah, I arrived there and they were like, you have to work 6 days a week from 7 in the morning till midnight. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
uh, and and the way I was raised, it's like you sign a contract and you do your contracts, it's like, I would never do that again. I would just like turn around and walk away straight away if I would ever walk into something like that again. But yeah, I did my 100 hours a week for a year. Came back. Then I was like, nah, I'm not going to continue this. So I came back to the Netherlands. I started working in another hotel, and then I was kind of done with hotel management. And I was like, let's do something different. So I started working for a bank. It wasn't really like the first job I had was also not really something that I really enjoyed, but I did like the bank, and I was like, if I'm gonna do banking, then I want to be there where there's action, where there is clients. So I applied in the dealing room, and they hired me, and then I had a really like my financial career took off, which was really fun and exciting as a young guy. Um, but also like I did that for 12 years. It was all very money driven. There was not really that much fulfillment. Sometimes I say to people, I did my first trade, which was 10,000 euros. I was so nervous. And then when I did my last trade, which was 40 billion, I couldn't care less. I was so
Hmm.
like, "Well, I don't care." Which uh, kind of, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So through that whole experience and my search for meaning and fulfillment, uh, it's like what do I really want to do? And then I started developing myself, a lot of personal development, uh, not only like on the mental aspect, but also like a very like I also started to train a lot, like six times a week, sometimes twice a day. Um, and yeah, things really started to shift. And out of that, a coaching career started. And yeah, that's kind of in like what 2-3 minutes why how that happened.
That's really interesting. And it's like there's a lot of people that start at one place and end up in another, and it's like there is this whole journey of self-discovery that hopefully most of us embark upon, because when we come out, like you said, like when if you got into that same situation now, you would turn around and walk away. But
Yes.
sometimes it takes this journey of learning about ourselves and of our self-value and of what's important to us to know, well, hey, this isn't for me, or maybe I want to be doing something else. But in the moment, it's not always easy to see that. In the moment, we're just sitting there going, what am I doing here right now? Where do
Yeah.
I want to be going, and why am I in this space? Because sometimes I remember there was a moment for me where I sat there, I looked up at my life, and I was like, I'm not happy. And I'm not happy. It's not that there's anything majorly wrong, but this is not where I want to be. Joe Rogan said that there was this great quote that many men, but I think it's people in general, are living lives of quiet desperation. Like they are in these lives that are unfulfilled and there's no meaning. And to me, it's like, for what I'm in the process of now is trying to seek out that meaning. And it seems like for you as well, there was this transformation from A to where you're at now. What were some of the, as you begin to find your meaning, how did you figure out what was the thing that you're supposed to be doing?
Well, I really wanna be with people, and I wanna help people, and I wanna um also get that kind of recognition,
Yeah.
um and the appreciation from people that have made a difference in their lives, big or small. And that was more of a driver for me than being the best trader or something like that. Even in trading, like the tendency was like on the trading floor where I worked, the bigger the asshole you are, the better the trader you are. And I'm like, it doesn't work like this, people. It's a
Mm,
relationship business. You're talking to most of the same clients on a daily basis. Yeah, if you're an asshole every single day, you'll be treated like one,
yeah.
and uh, that's really not what I wanted to do. I mean, I I was I started my first job working in a restaurant, and that's like, I mean, that's helping people in a way, and you
Yeah.
have a connection with people, and they're like, some of them are in like, they have a one-on-one dinners, there is a group, there's a family, there's so many different dynamics, and it's just that really appealed to me, um, and that seems to come back to me in things that I do, now when I do a funeral, for example. It's it's an event with a coffin in the center,
Mm,
and people, it is really like that. But like, for people that are going to a funeral, they go, yeah, there's so much emotions, not really like the best emotions, let's put it like that. Or, I mean, there's grief and stuff like that, but that's not, there's separation for me between that emotion and the work that I do. But, I organize the event for them. I take a lot of care out of their hands. And then they're super grateful, which is a really nice, uh, at least I find that a really nice experience. And at the same time, it's business. If it's not working, or if my suppliers are messing up, I can't just be like, oh, look at these people, they're just mourning. You need to. No, it's like, this is not what we agreed. This is like, you need to be on time. You need to correct. You need to, like, I'm not paying for this. It's not what we agreed. Um, and that's when people look at that business, they don't see that. They just
yeah.
think like you're just like holding these people's hand, and just like, but it doesn't work like that. You can't do it like that.
That's interesting. It's interesting too, where I think one of the things that's always been fascinating for me about funerals is that um, there was this great movie, a Japanese movie about this musician. and he was in the, I can't remember the name. I will look it up though. He was a in the orchestra in Japan, one of the big orchestras. But then something happened, and he lost his job. And when he moved back to his hometown, the only job that was there was a, I think the name of the movie is Departures. And when he moved back to his hometown, the only job he could find was working in the local funeral home.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because at first he was just really not into it. And like this, I studied all this music, I did all this. But what he found was that, and the movie was called Departures, and he was the last person who got to say goodbye to the
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
To this, he was the last person who got to guide them on to this next step. One of the things that the movie looks at as one of the central tenets is that um, life. I have a friend right now who is dealing with terminal cancer, and for so much of our life, we have these dreams, we have these goals, we have these ambitions. But there's a certain point in time where, and I still have dreams and goals and ambitions, and I know so many people do, and yet you have to remember one of the things that I think is so important is in Stoicism they have this concept of um, what was it? It's essentially focusing on the fact that all of us die, all of us will have
Yeah.
this end, and there's no time. Don't You shouldn't waste any time on self sabotage. Shouldn't waste any time on fear and regret, and just step into things that are going to fulfill you, that are going
Yeah.
to bring you to this next level. I have this story for myself last night. I want to make some change in my life. I would love to move back to the USA and get into a new job and kind of step into a new life there. I've loved living in Asia, but I want to make a change. But I get petrified of change.
Uh-huh. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I noticed it last night. My wife was out at this location. She was singing, and she said, "Do you want to come out here and watch the show with and be at my show?" And I was just like, there was no taxis last night because it's the Lunar New Year here. And so I was
Right. Yeah.
looking, and I was like, all right, well, let's see how much. I said, like, I can get a motorcycle taxi. It's 20 kilometers on a motorcycle taxi, and that's like an hour drive through the city. And I was like, you know what? I could stay in my room. I'm comfortable here. I feel safe here. I feel
Hmm.
okay here.
Hmm.
But there's no change here.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no growth here. So I decided, you know what? Let's go. I stepped out. My daughter was with my mother-in-law, and I was like, I'm going to go on an adventure because when I was young, I loved adventures, and then as I got
Yeah.
older, they made me afraid. They made me worried,
Uh-huh.
and I self-sabotage like crazy. I'll sit
Yeah.
there and go, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I'm nervous about doing that. I got on that motorcycle, and I was just like, let's go. And it was a long ride. It was dusty. It was bumpy, but it was fun. And when
Yeah.
I got there, it was an adventure. And it
Uh-huh.
reminded me of yeah, I can do that. I can pull that off. I'm strong enough to do that. I have the power to do that. You in your bio, you talk about how a lot of people have self-sabotage, but you
Yes.
can turn that into mastery. How can people work past their self-sabotage energy and embrace something better?
Yeah. It's you well, it's little step by step,
Yeah,
you have to do the confrontation basically. And exactly what you did, it's like, okay, I get, I call the motorcycle taxi, that's step one. Then
right.
you step on the motorcycle, that's step two, and then you do the journey, it's step three, then you arrive, and then step four, and little by little, um things start to change. Uh, but you've also could have like sat back in your house and be like, this is comfortable. This is what I know. This is like, yeah. But yeah, you have to create somehow a bigger. a bigger meaning of
Yeah.
your version of going out there. It's like, oh, I want to get, I talk to executives and they want to make a next step, and they really want to, and there's just like, what I say a lot of times is like, you have to be it before you become it. You know, you,
Oh,
you have to, if you want to be the executive, start acting like the executive today. Start acting like you manage 200 people instead of 25. What choices would you make in your calendar? Well, how would you talk to people? How would you uh, talk to your team leads or your yeah? And then, like, what do you expect? What would you expect from them? You know, uh, and then they're like, can I do that? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then it not only becomes a natural thing for yourself, but it also becomes a natural thing for the person that's going to appoint you or the committee or whoever, because they start to look at you differently because you're presenting yourself in a different way. Now, um, that's in a career thing. If you wanna take up a hobby or something new, or you want to move back to the US, for example, like sitting in Vietnam and staying there, it's not really going to change, or.
no.
So there's so many different ways you can do it. I have worked with this woman. She was like, I want to, she said like three things. She wanted to work abroad, she wanted to live abroad, and she wanted to have a baby. I said, well, with the first two, I can help you. Last one, you have to do yourself. But I was like, where would you wanna live? And she's like, I want to live in Spain. He's like, okay, we're gonna work 3 months together initially. You will go to Spain in these 3 months.
Yeah.
She's like, it's like, why? It's like, that's what you want. I don't care if you go for 2 days or for 3 weeks or for a month. It doesn't matter. But I want you to go there and like rent an Airbnb or something and live in that city like you would live in the Netherlands. You would go to work, you would do your yoga or whatever, go, and then you see if you like it. And she's like, oh, okay, I think I can do that. So that's, she'd been thinking about that for years. So she moved out. I think she went like in the 3 months that we worked together, she went for 10 days. And by the end of the 3 months, she went for 6 months to Spain, found a job in in the Caribbean where she went afterwards, and she found the husband or the guy, and in Spain, and it's just like, had she sat down uh, back in the Netherlands thinking about, I want to move to Spain, it would never happen,
Yeah.
and just by taking a little step and thinking that's possible, or that someone, like me or anyone in your network believes in you and challenges you, or like pushes you, or however, whatever works for you, starts this whole new train of live events. And that's exciting. That's like the motorcycle ride. All of a sudden, you're alive. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
You're moving. There was I remember when I was younger, a friend of mine wanted to be on the basketball team. And he
Mhm.
kept talking about being on the basketball team. He kept saying, I want to be like basketball. I want to be this basketball player. One day he went to the coach. He said, Coach, I want to be on the basketball team. And the coach said, okay, come here tomorrow. And he came the next day. And the coach had him come into the gym and handed him a basketball. He said, start shooting some hoops. And he's like, am I going to try out? Just, I want you to shoot this ball 100 times today from this spot, 100 times.
Mhm.
And 100 times finished, the coach was like, all right, go home. And the guy was like, okay, what else do I need to do? He's like, come back tomorrow. He came back tomorrow, shoot the ball 100 times. And after a month, he came 100, every day and shot the ball, so many numbers of times. And then the coach said, come back next month. Now we're going to start dribbling. He started playing, dribbling the ball. And he kept doing these steps, these step after step after step. And after 1 year, the guy could actually play basketball.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
now,
yeah.
and the coach said, now you can talk to me about wanting to be on the team. And he's like, I want to be on the team. And he said, you're not ready yet. So he
Uh-huh.
started doing more drills and he
Yeah,
started
yeah, yeah.
putting them through the motions. He started learning plays. And after 6 months, when the tryouts came, he got on the team. But the coach said, if you want to play basketball, the first place that you have to go is to get on the court.
Yeah.
Because if you're not on the court, then you're not even in the right ballpark. You're not even in the right game. You have to sit there and step into that game. So if I want to move back to the US, I can sit here and send out resume after resume, or I can fly back and hit the ground and sit there and say, let's go network, let's go talk to people. And I think that that's one of the things that I love it when people talk about that, because we find so many ways to self-sabotage and we do it unknowingly, and it might be that for me, I remember I had this job offer in Boston with a really big podcaster and they were like, are you ready to go? And I found so many excuses.
Yeah.
I found so many reasons that it couldn't work, it wouldn't work. And I stepped back and I look at it now and I think about it now. I stepped back because I was afraid. And I step back. You ever see that Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man? Where he's like, he has to say yes to
Oh,
everything. And
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
Jim Carrey in his awesome Jim Carrey style. But it was interesting because in that movie, he's just saying yes to opportunity. Because so often our self sabotage are these little ways that it might go wrong. Well, if I move to the US first and my wife and daughter have to come after, will they be okay without me? Sure, they'll be fine. They've got the whole support network here. They've got
Yeah.
all these people that can help out. Will I be able to figure out X, Y, and Z? Well, I won't know if I can figure them out until I try,
Yeah.
and it's most
Oh,
likely you have to be in the game, but we will shut it down before we even get there. Like, I'm not even going to try because I had this one friend, another friend that said, that when this guy was trying out of the basketball team, this guy was like more athletic, more gifted, but he didn't show up. He's like, I might be able to, but he never
yeah.
went on the court. He never
Yeah.
went there. And that person, and I'm not judging them, he's had a happy life, but he's never really done anything. He always was just getting by. And maybe that's the life he wanted. And good for him. But at the same time, when I look at that person, I go, that could have been excellent. That person could have been a leader, could have been a person who transformed things. How do people become aware of little ways that they're self sabotaging themselves?
Well, one of the I want to say one thing before I answer that question. Like, we as people, we live into, well, we look at life from the stands and we're not on the court. First thing. Second
Yeah.
thing is we live life as one scenario.
Oh,
The way you envision going back to the US is going to be one way, maybe two. But it's like, and most of the time it's not really looking that great. It's difficult, it's hard. I will not find the right job, and blah 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 blah. But if you go, all of a sudden there is 1,000 different ways,
yeah.
and it's never going to be the scenario that you thought it was going to be.
Right?
So it's like, if you and we're all human beings, we're all very curious, and we're all like, you know we want to live, we want to see things, do things. And if we let those scenarios come to us and be a little bit more of the yes man, it's just like, you know today we're going to go left, let's see what's there.
Right.
And then maybe tomorrow we'll continue going left, or we'll decide to go right anyway. And then life really, like, uh yeah, pops right open. Um so that's what I wanted to say. Like, and then how do people recognize that they self sabotage? Or when I before I started to do positive intelligence, I did talk to clients about self sabotage, and it was always very limited in the sense that, you know, they could understand that they would eat that chocolate when they wouldn't, you know, or that they would go, that they said I would go to the gym, and then, you know, they would only go once instead of 3 times a week, or like, you know, they would kind of like pick a fight with their partner or with their boss, or, you know, but they couldn't really like pinpoint what it was. And in in positive intelligence, they've identified 9 different saboteurs. So you have, like, for example, the controller, the hyperachiever, restless. Now, and you do an assessment. It's very simple. You can do it online. Anyone can do it, and but it's very um, the way it's described. It's very, people all of a sudden are like, oh, that's me. That's me. You
Mhm.
know, I am really like a controller. And then, um, like, as you know, let's go back to the motorcycle ride. Let's say you're a controller. You know, you're living you're in your room, you're in your house, you have all control. You know, that's where you're comfortable. And going out and doing this motorcycle ride, there's less control. You know, so
Yeah.
you want to have the control, so you choose to stay in a very controlled situation. But then that becomes your saboteur. You know, if you, let's say you want to move to the back to the US, and there's no control because you don't know what the situation is, so you step away. Now you know that this is your mechanism. I'm a hyperachiever, for example. So what I do, it's like everything I do is never good enough. It always
Mhm.
needs to be better.
Yeah, right.
But also like that also be like limits me in like, I'll only do projects that I know I'll succeed in, you know. Um, and that's like really limiting myself. You know, there's 1,000 reasons for me not to ever have done stand up comedy. Um, and then when my hyperachiever kicks in, you know, I'm like, I need to have a Netflix special, you know, first try. That's kind of, and that doesn't work, you know. So I have to go through the steps, through the motions, and find ways of enjoyment, and in that, and I do, you know. But there is always like this thing that's pushing me that I need to be the best.
Yeah.
Uh, I was in I did a course, and we all participated. No, well, 3 of us participated in a competition at different in different months, but it was the same competition. And I'm annoyed that I did not win. You know, I'm really annoyed. But that's my hyperachiever. Now I can do 2 things, or I can do 3 things. I could be like, oh, you know, that's it. I'll never do it again. It's stupid. It's like, uh, yeah, but that's not gonna bring me where I wanna go, or who I wanna be. You know, I
Yeah.
don't want like 1 setback or 2 setbacks. Uh, let me let me stop enjoying what I'm doing. You know, and if you do stand up comedy, you will bomb. You know, you will not,
Yeah.
like, some of these people had to do I mean, horrible things. Maybe it's a bit exaggerated, but they had to perform day after day. No one was there, and no one is laughing, and they are now super successful. You know, and some of them did that for years. You know, it's kind of like the basketball player. Come here, and go on the court and shoot for a whole year. You know, then we can talk. Yeah, if you do one show, uh, you're not going to be the newest talent booked by in 5 different countries. That's just not how it works. You have to make some hours, and you have to find your joy in it. Um, yeah, and then things shift. Did that answer your question?
That is, it is. No, it's
Good.
awesome. And one of the things that you're saying though too is that when I start thinking about creating real change, it is an incremental thing, but it also is a necessity to overcome some of that fear early on. That fear and that uncomfortableness. Like I think so many people are just terrified of feeling uncomfortable nowadays. All of us are very like we feel comfortable, and comfortable is a crutch at times. And when
Mm.
if you want to be a great stand up comedian, then you need to be willing to go out and do stand up comedy. And like you said, that might involve absolutely bombing sometimes. That might involve, just having a day where your stand up comedy is not going well. Like sometimes things can be scary. Like for
Yes.
me, hopping on that motorcycle was scary. If you want to be a great stand up comedian, you're going to stand in front of people and be terrified of bombing. You might have that fear and but for me, one of the things that I try to remember is one of the most important things for me when I try to create real change. Number one, you got to keep showing up. I find that you got to keep showing up. And number two, I just have to tell myself, you know what? This fear I'm feeling, it's not real. It is, it's a reaction because I don't want to get, it's like an evolutionary reaction that I don't want to get eaten by a lion, but these are not lions. And you know
No.
what? If I can keep showing up, I get better. Just like that guy putting up the shots every day. If you show up, you slowly get better, but you have to sit there and it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
What type of mindset, um, you've in your work, you said your mindset is like the cornerstone of your coaching. Now,
Yes.
what types of mindsets help people really make change?
Well, first it starts with someone like you cannot like you have to change your mindset first because
Yeah.
you what you have today is what you've created from your old mindset,
Yes.
and that's what's possible for you right now. If you when you have so if you I mean yeah let's take the stand-up comedy thing
Yeah.
again. I've been like wanting to do acting classes for 2 decades, I guess. And then some people would tell me, oh, maybe you should do acting classes. I was like, oh yeah, I should someday, sometime, whatever. But I really wanted it. But my mindset was really like, I can't, no one is waiting for me. No one is like, whatever. The fear kicks in. And then like someone said it to me again. And I was like, okay, am I gonna like ignore this person and the next and whatever. So there is something there that you want to try. Let's give it a try. So I went to my first acting classes. I was nervous like hell, it was horrible. I was just everything in my body was screaming, don't go, don't go, don't go. So I sit there and most of the people that were there were like nervous wreck. They're like, why am I here? But so I did it, and then COVID hit, and we had to stop, and then my life changed a bit, and I got busy coaching and then doing other stuff. And then one of my clients was like, "I'm doing um, improv comedy," and I was like, "Oh, that's exciting." It's like maybe it's time to pick it up again. So I went to the website, and you could do improv comedy, storytelling from the stage, or stand up comedy. And I was like, I was looking there for improv comedy, but I really wanted to do stand up comedy. And I was like, but that was more scary, And I was like, you just have to go for it. You have to try, and you're not gonna die. Nothing is gonna like, and just see what happens. Have the experience. It's something that you want. So, I mean, I did that, and little by little, um, we were trained, and we became more comfortable, and we um, tried our jokes, and people were like within the group, and that's kind of how it grows. And then you go out on stage. But
Yeah.
had I had to do that from an old mindset, in my old mindset, I would never ever do stand-up comedy.
Right.
So you have to create something like the new mindset where you'd be like, I can do this. What would it be like? What would I need to do to ever be on the stage? And then little by little, you fill that in, and like, yeah, you go to a website, you register, and then you do your first thing. And there were people that came there and they left after the first class, which is um, which is fine. But at least they're on their journey. Um, they also had a mindset that they couldn't do it at first, and then along the way, doing in their course, more of their self sabotage kicked in, and they were like, I can't for whatever reason, whatever limiting belief they had. But that doesn't mean that these people will never ever be uh, doing stand up. That's
Right.
it's just their journey. They might come back for a next course, or they just might go by themselves, or they whatever they do. Uh, but that's all okay.
Yeah.
It's not one trajectory to becoming a stand up comedian or a coach or whatever you want to be or do or wherever you want to go. Um, yeah.
You hit on a couple points that I love, and I want to tap into them a little bit. The first being, I studied acting as well, and
Mhm.
I loved it. I studied with the Ivana Chubbuck method in Los Angeles, and studied with some of her teachers, and I love it. One of the things that was interesting to me when I was living in LA, I was working in production, but I also did some acting. And it was interesting because early on, when I first moved to LA, I did some background acting, which is like the bottom rung of acting. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was fun because I got to go on set and just to be around people, watch how films were made, see what was going on. And I got to see some really cool people, now people that I think are super awesome. I got to work with them at some point in time, and I know that guy. I've been on set with him.
yeah, yeah,
I've been
yeah.
on set with her, and it was fun. And one of the things that was interesting is that it was interesting because I would show up and they're like, today you are a doctor, put on this doctor outfit. And everyone that day treated me like a doctor. They called me
Uh-huh.
doctor, and I was just like, and it was just a shift in clothing, but there was this difference in aura around me. When I dressed like a police officer, everyone treated me like a cop. It was
Uh-huh.
really weird. People
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
treated me like a cop. And there was this deference, this level of respect. I was like, "Oh, can I stand here?" Like, "Oh yeah, sorry, officer." And I was like, "I'm not a cop, man. I'm an actor." But it was interesting. And whatever outfit I wore, it was like a different story. And I've had this really interesting thing that happened with two different people I interviewed recently on my podcast.
Mhm.
One looked just like my dad, and there's
Uh-huh.
another who looked just like my sister. Now,
Uh-huh.
my dad is who he is. But then when I saw this other person that looked just like him, and we had this conversation, and I was fascinated. And it was almost like if my father had grown up a different life, grown up in a different place. And the same thing for this woman. She was so different from my sister, but she looked just like her. I sent my sister a picture of this
Mhm.
this woman, and I was like, "Hey, look at this lady. What do you think?"
You have
She's
a
like,
twin.
"That's creepy. That looks just like me." And what was
Uh-huh.
interesting was that when I talked to my sister and my dad about this, it was like they were almost like, well, it was just like a different life. Now, why I'm bringing that up is what you mentioned, that the old you created the reality you're in now. And
Yes.
your new mindset, the new you has to get you to this next level. There was this interesting phenomenon I read about in Taiwan. Taiwan has this special phenomenon where people, when they are dealing with bad luck, will change their name. And the
Oh, okay.
idea is that, well, Sean wasn't good with money. Sean wouldn't take the advantage of opportunities, but Eric, Eric does. Eric likes this. Eric says yes for things. Sean wouldn't do that stuff, but Eric would. And I've heard about other people, like Beyonce had a different personality. I think she had
Yeah.
this Sasha Fierce. So when she
Yeah.
went on stage, Sasha Fierce felt brave. Sasha Fierce felt strong. And so it's interesting, the new mindset and a new, almost new story of yourself is needed, and you change your clothes and you become a doctor as an actor, change your
Yeah.
clothes, you
Yeah.
become
Yeah. Yeah.
a police officer. It's possible to make change, but you have to envision it and you have to have new stories.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's exactly how you create the new mindset. I mean, of course, you like when you're an actor and you put on a white coat, it you're not going to do actual surgery on people, but
Right.
it's fascinating how you say that people treat you differently right on the spot. And that's kind of like the same thing as I said earlier with, like, if you want to become that executive,
Yeah.
you have to act in that way as if you have the role already. Uh, and people will not necessarily see that around you immediately, but um, over time they will see it. You
Yeah.
know, will that guarantee? It will, of course, it will not guarantee you that to give you that it will get you the spot, but
Right.
um, your chances are much more likely than that you will than that you won't. And a lot of people, like, sit in that role. It's like, I can't do it because I don't have the knowledge, or I need to have a degree that I don't have, or I
Yeah.
need to have, let's say, a more financial background, or whatever. I need to know more about operations, which I don't know, or blah blah blah. But that just keeps them in the old mindset, in the position that they are in. That they also, I mean, they didn't know that they could get in that position, uh, or like 15 years ago. They
Yeah.
were like, I don't know, they were like, they had their first job, but they believed that they could grow to a certain level, and that's, most of the time, that's their limit as well. It's like they don't go beyond that. So you need to create that new level, or that new idea that you can do, you know,
Yeah.
um, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy either way.
Yeah. There was something like, it might not guarantee that you will have the success, but it puts you in a space that you are much more likely to get there. There was this great study about, this great book by this guy named Eric Barker called, it's written Barking Up the Tree, and it looks at success. And he goes through the science of, of people who think they're lucky. And what
Mhm.
they find is that people who believe they're lucky are more likely to succeed. Well, why? Well, because they put themselves into more situations. They're out there doing it. Like, man, I'm really lucky, so I'm going to step out and go to this meetup tonight. Versus the
Mhm.
person's like, well, I'm not lucky, so I'm not going to go to the meetup tonight. Well, what was the difference there? Well, the difference over here is that this guy thought he was lucky, and that belief in his luck made him go to the meetup. And at the meetup, he's going to seem more confident. He's going to seem more, outgoing. There was this, that's one of the things I've been fascinated by, the placebo effect my entire life,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
people who believe something, they have better outcomes. And it's not just in medicine. Like,
Yeah.
we'll have this is your lucky coin, you hold on to this coin and good things are going to happen. Be like, really? There we go. And they walk into the line and they just have that exuberance and confidence, and things just start going their way. Well, maybe it's all in your mind, but if it is, then use that. Get out there and build upon that.
But exactly. I mean, it's like I'm gonna, like, after this call, I'm gonna take the train, and I'm gonna be just like this. There's like so many different. I can say like, oh, I'm just gonna sit in a train. I'm gonna read my book. I hope no one will disturb me, and if someone will start a conversation with me, I will feel disturbed. But I can also be like, oh, I'm going on a train journey, and I'm hopefully I meet a nice person. You know,
Right.
have a nice encounter, whether it's just like someone saying hello when I enter the train, uh, and then that is so much more likely to happen. Either scenario, whatever I choose, consciously or subconsciously, will kind of happen.
Yes.
You know, and that's in any area of our lives. Whether it's uh, uh, in your health, in your career, in your relationships. There's so much we can do, create, uh, and what we believe, yeah, tends to happen.
100%. If you could go back in time and give some advice to your younger self, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, um, just just act. Take action after action, and know like all the fears that you have are not, they're just not real. It's all like, and I've done well, crazy stuff, or where people be like, really, I've changed careers many times. I lived in many countries. I left overnight, um and yeah, that's like, I could have done, looking back, or I could have been much more courageous, or much more like crazy, or more alive, or um and I would, one of the other things I would tell tell myself is that, um whatever, like, how shall I say that, we're so concerned about what other people think of us, and they're not thinking of us.
No.
Because we're all too busy thinking of ourselves, how we're being perceived, and how, uh, uh, so let not let your thoughts that other people what that let your thoughts that other people might have of you never influence you. Um, and then I think my life would have been like extremely free and happy, and yeah, it would have been a bigger life. Not that I'm like regretful or something, but I also, I'm also aware that's how the human brain works. But yeah, that's kind of an advice I would give myself. Trust yourself, just go and do, and enjoy.